He said, he took a chair. Take a chair. There's a chair. Lo and behold, a chair. A chair. Do you think that chair could support you? Yeah, sure. Look at the chair. It's welded, designed properly in such a way that it could hold somebody. Yes, it could hold somebody. No doubt about it. The chair could hold it. So he asked an individual, why isn't it? And they said, because I'm not sitting in it. He said, there's your gospel. Because a lot of people believe that Christ is who he says he is. Insofar as that's a chair. It could hold me. But they haven't entrusted their lives. They haven't sat in the chair. They have not allowed him the lordship of their life. Sure, it could hold me. Jesus is Lord. I believe that. Okay. But you mean I got to trust him? And what that means, beloved, is something very simple. Entirely apart from any notion of your own righteousness or mine. Entirely apart from any... You know how we do. Have you ever brought the gospel to anybody? If you have, and you say, why should God let you go into his heaven? What is it people say? They always say good things about themselves. Well, I pay my taxes, I love my wife, I don't drive the... I drive the speed limit, blah, blah, blah. I'm a pretty good guy. Well, then you're trusting in you. And you are not in the chair. Saving faith is exclusive to Christ. It casts out any notion of one's own goodness. It casts out any notion of one's own righteousness. It rather says, Christ is my righteousness. And the irony is that here, even in churches, I might even say especially in churches, we keep kind of going back to our own righteousness. Look how good I am. Built a big building. Look how good I am. Did all these things. Look how good I am. And we should be pointing to Christ. There's no salvation in any other means. I was looking at a documentary. Chechen terrorist. Did I get that? Close enough.
Chechen.
All right. Thank you. The terrorist, and they had gone into a school, among other things, and taken hostages, and murdered a bunch of people, a bunch of children. And they were talking to the surviving children. Little 8, 9-year-old children. And what I was struck by was, and I mean it makes sense to me, how angry they were. And I mean it makes sense to me. They watched their father, their mother, their sister, their best friend get killed. They wanted to kill them all. That was the idea, was kill them all. Children. That's what the terrorists had in mind. Kill them all. And yet, by the extraordinary grace of God, some of them survived and lived to tell their story. And there was one girl that really bothered me, especially out of all of them. And as a means of therapy, she would draw pictures. She was only about 8 or 9 years old. Draw pictures of the terrorists and then tear them up and burn them. And she would draw more pictures, tear them up, and burn them. And she said something that haunted me. She said, it's never enough. Vengeance is never enough. It's never enough. I wonder if you understand what it's like to fall into the hands of God, whose vengeance is never satisfied. that will go on and on. And then it'll go on and on. And then it'll go on and on. Unsatisfied. And yet Christ comes, and in one profound and exclusive act of mercy, exhausts the wrath of God. This is the greatest story that has ever been told. Rejection of Him means you're the sacrifice that will never satisfy. What a dreadful thing. One of the things that I teach a lot, and I'm given the opportunity to teach, and is that judgment is sudden, and it's without remedy. It's sudden. Matter of fact, you read that, and I'll just read it for you. It's in the 29th Proverbs, somewhere in there, I think the first verse. I'll read it for you. He who is often rebuked and hardens his neck will suddenly be destroyed, and that without remedy. You see that? There's no remedy. Once judgment comes, there's no lasting remedy. That's it. And into eternity. But here's the good news. I was having a talk with a good friend of mine the other day, and I thought, that's not the whole gospel. This is the gospel. Salvation happens suddenly, too, and without remedy. Salvation happens suddenly. You can walk in here tonight in death and go out in life. Amen. You can walk in here tonight in darkness and utter death and walk out in light. If you sit in a chair, if you'll depart from any notion of your own righteousness and stop telling yourself what a great guy you are, and how God is just going to take you the way you are. You can tell yourself that. You can try that. This is the day of salvation. The Bible always says it that way. It never says someday down the line. I can't think of it. I'm in a room full of guys who know the Bible more than I do. Anybody at all tell me where God says, put off the day of salvation? Nowhere. Put it off. Never. Remember what we said at the outset. Godly obedience does not delay. I don't know who I'm speaking to. I don't know who I'm speaking to. I'm speaking to me. I'm speaking to me. I'm enjoying it. Praise the Lord. I mean, I'm almost like, I love this truth. I love this truth. I don't know who I'm speaking to. It's not done. There's one in here who's still hanging on to some notion of their own righteousness, their own goodness, who wants to present themselves before the throne of God. I plead with you. Be reconciled to God tonight. I plead with you. From the bottom of